And good evening. Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the VRS Heroes program. I'm your host, George Pardos, and we're um, wanted to say thank you for the support of VRS. So tonight, what we're going to talk about. Hold on a second. We are going to talk about is training and maintenance phase, training phases, and why you've got so many idiots out there that are trainers. So one of the things that I'm gonna be critical of for a little bit. One of the things that has happened recently is the with I don't know who I have a theory on who invented um, CrossFit. I think it was orthopedic surgeons that said, we're not quite getting enough clients from this section. I think we're going to create a program that hurts yourself, so we can get more clients because we want to be able to to treat people for stupid shit that they make, and so as a result they designed CrossFit, and CrossFit has numerous injuries. Now, why is this important? Okay, so when you go train, right, when you go train there, I've covered this um on more than one occasion, and the one of the things that I pointed out has been is operational tempo. Um, and thanks, Brian. I hope I'm glad that you're safe, Brian. I know that you're down in Kentucky and people got hit rather hard. I'm glad you're safe. A lot of families out there just and that's one of the things we offer at VRS. We condolences to some of the families out there. Um, so people don't understand the difference between going into a training phase and a maintenance phase. A maintenance phase you can keep up for a long time. You can go into a maintenance phase for 6 months. I mean, training phases are you are limited. So, and why is it, why am I covering this tonight? Because one of the things that happens, and I've seen this in the veteran community, and this is why I'm saying this, is we have a lot of veterans that used to be able to do, that used to be able to do, I don't know, let's just say you're a Marine and you could do a first class PFT. You could do, run 3 miles in 20 minutes, do 18 pull-ups, many sit-ups, or if you did the Army PFT, you could do push-ups, whatever you did. It doesn't matter. And now you're hurt, and now you can't do the same things you wanted to do. So a training phase is always on the higher end of your training. So if you went to train and said, "Hey, listen, I'm getting ready for an event. The event is 8 weeks out." Or let's say it's 12 weeks out, whatever, and you get into the gym, you start training heavier. If you're a power lifter, you start adding weight. Let's say that your goal is say a 600-pound bench. During your training phase, you might only have been benching 425, 450. Now you're going to get closer to training at 540, 530, 550, 575 off a two board. You're going to do some 600, 615s off of two boards with assists. And so it always goes back onto what percentages are you going to train at. And so one of the problems with this is that we as a whole do not like the fact that we don't teach people the difference. And we don't teach people operational tempo. And so one of the things, and the problem that happens with this is that we wind up um uh Eugene, do me a favor, send a yeah, and I will tell you this. Ar- arthritis is a arthritis is a hell of a deterrent from working out. Do me a favor, would you mind keeping in touch with us? Send us a message to VRS. We have a program that we're introducing in the next 60 days that will help you tremendously, especially with what you're, with what you're doing, especially with arthritis and joint help. But what happens is, so let's say that there's a video of a guy that was, that started yoga with Diamond Dallas Page Yoga, and he was in Desert Storm, and he was in Desert Storm, and he had hurt his back and had gone up to, like, gained a lot of weight, and because he could not do just about anything. Then what he wound up doing is he started this yoga program that Dallas, he was in the WWE. He started this program, and once he got on it, he lost his weight, got mobility back. And one of the things that people are kind of not forgetting is that mobility, your ability to move, it gives you the ability to train. And people think, oh, I can only run a mile in a 15-minute pace. Okay, do what you can. If you try to run at if you try to do too much, and you say, that's when you put stresses on the joints. You put too much stress on not only on the joint, but the ligaments. Hey, Richard, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. Thank you for supporting VRS. But what happens is you stress a joint. So let me give you a prime example. If anybody, most guys I know have had shoulder injuries. And one of the things that's happened with a shoulder injury is that it hurts. Rotator cuff, torn labrum, whatever it is. You go work out and you think that the joint is okay. And then when you go to work out, the joint isn't okay. And then you do something stupid. And the next day it hurts even worse than if you would have just not worked out at all. And that's a prime example. I've seen veterans do that, or it pops out of socket because you're trying to do too much. So I say all of this is to understand when you're going to work out, what stage are you in? Because if you're not healthy, then maybe you need, if you're not healthy, maybe then what you need is a stage where you're decompressing, or maybe you're not decompressing, maybe you're doing rehabilitation. Rehabilitation looks a lot different than training, looks a lot different than maintenance. So rehabilitation is going to be short movements with limited stress on both the muscle and the joint. So if and I've said this before, and the reason this is important to people is that you have, I walked into a gym one day, and like I said, I yelled at this trainer. He had this woman who had been in her 60s doing plyometrics. There is no fucking reason on this planet you should have somebody doing plyometrics, and especially with the mobility that she had. But this guy didn't know it better, and he was walking around with his little, coffee cup, and I'm like, gee, and the point that I'm saying about this is that when you're training people, you need to understand it. You need to understand that a rehabilitation phase is what you're trying to accomplish in a rehab phase, is you're trying to get them back to the 90th percentile of mobility. Let me say that again, is if you're hurt and you're injured, okay, very rarely are you going to be at 100%. It just doesn't happen. Very rarely are you ever at 100% in mobility. I very rarely have seen that. I mean, you might have that in elite athletes every once in a while, but even elite athletes are hurt. That they get hurt. They've had injuries. Even if they're competing at their, they've always, there's a difference. Now, are they, hurt or injured? Yeah. But most of the elite athletes always have something wrong with them. So what they're doing is they're competing at an elite level. They're just accommodating the injuries that they have. I mean, you take a look at Usain Bolt's last race, he tore a hamstring, and he was still, his time up to that was, in the top 1% of any racer ever. So what you're trying to do when you go to a rehab phase, if you're trying to get your patient, or you're trying to get yourself, whoever it is, to get in the 90th percentile of movement. So if you have a torn rotator cuff, like I'll give you, whatever prime example, let's just use this, water bottle. Pretend it's a football. What you want to do is be able to reach back and throw the water bottle. I mean, throw a football. That's mobility. Now, the reason you do that is because the range of motion then moves the joint and moves the joint forward to a point that you can now do maintenance. And there are people, like I have over the years, I've just got beat up. I don't bench over 200 pounds anymore. The most I ever bench anymore is 225, 245. I don't do that anymore. That's my max. I don't squat over 300 anymore. I don't deadlift. Well, I'm retarded when it comes to deadlift, but I'll put up 405. But on deadlifts, I think deadlifts are different things. I will go heavy on deadlifts, but on squats and some of the other things, I just don't go heavy anymore because I'm not trying to accomplish anything other. I'm not trying to bench, 400 pounds anymore. I'm not trying to bench 500 pounds anymore. I don't need, I haven't never benched 500. Most I've ever gotten up off my chest was 415. I did bench 415 once. But again, I'm not a bencher. But the point of it, going back to it, is the fact that when you're going back to training, you need to understand these things, because a lot of the things that we're not teaching people is that it's okay to take your time getting back into the gym. It's okay to take your time when you're going into mobility, is that you want to have the joint, the movement, whatever you're working on, you need to have as much mobility as you can, as closer to the 100%. And most injuries, post injuries, are usually, very rarely do they come back at 100%. Most of them are going to come back at in the 90th percentile. So when you when you are back, if you're injured as a veteran, you're listening to this, what you need to realize is that your injuries are going to have a natural progression to heal. That you're going to need some, and you're going to need multiple you're going to need multiple things that you're going to have to work on for them to get healthy. You're going to need to you need to go to do stretching during maintenance phases of training. This is where if you run across somebody that's a trainer and you're doing this, maintenance phases are, you're not lifting very heavy. You're making sure you have good form. You're making sure that you're doing full range of motion, and you're making sure that you're doing stabilizers as well. You're doing concentric movements, and you're also doing stabilizers. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're doing compound movements, so you're doing squats, then you need to do leg extensions, you need to do leg curls. If you're doing deadlifts, you do if you're doing power cleans, you need to you need to do upright rows. Bench, you do flies. I mean it's not just one movement. And the problem that we have with this is that when we're sitting there talking to people that are hurt, especially if you've had sometimes even if you've had a bad knee injury, just start walking, something like that. You don't need to go back at 100% right away. And that's one of the things that what I've said to people before is that if you go back too quick, too hard, too soon, your joint, not only do you change your movement, but you're also, you change, if the joint isn't healthy, you're changing your technique to accommodate the joint. Then and then you're not using it the way it's designed to use. And that's why, I'll give you a prime example. The Tommy John injury for, you see pitchers that have, that come back a lot of times after one of those injuries, they're done. They don't come back. And because number two is they have to change the rotation of the ball. I mean, it just doesn't seem right. So that's why I say to people, take your time getting back. Make sure that, and if you ever seen the game, if you've ever seen the movie Friday Night Lights, I'm going to say this guy's name wrong, so I want to make sure I get it right. Hold on, what was his name? Boobie Miles, the actor, he came back and he tried to run on a bad knee, and when he tried to come back on a bad knee, it just collapsed. The joint wasn't ready because, again, he didn't have any of the, it just wasn't ready. And that's, again, so what we're going to close out with is on training. If you're training to get back to normal after an injury, take your time. Make sure that you can do, the most important thing is to get full range of movement. You need to be able, and then before you start going heavy, you need to make sure that, the joints are healthy, because if you go to push your joint when it's not healthy, you're going to tear it out of socket even worse, because it's just not quite ready for it to adapt to the load. And, so people come back too early from an injury. You see that in the NFL, NBA, all the time. They come back too early, then they injure it, and they get even worse than, had they just sat out. And that's something that happens all the time. And again, the reason I say this is that, a lot of times people go into, and why a lot of trainers that I see out there, they sometimes the trainers do some really stupid things because they want you to be, they want you to think that they're doing something special. And sometimes simple movements are better than doing all of this, I've seen people try to do this stuff off a ball. I've seen people, where they, the inflatable ball, and they have these people doing movements that they shouldn't be, like doing squats with your legs up on there. And it's, the keep it, I believe in the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. They have them doing these movements that are just too complex, and they put too much stress on it, and then they wind up hurting their client, or the client gets frustrated because they can't do the movements and then doesn't come back. That's one of the issues that a lot of people have, is that a lot of people quit working out because they get frustrated because they can't do some of the exercises, because what the trainer is trying to do is throw all of this at them, and they just don't know, what the hell to do. So in that being said, keep it simple. Do not do anything out of the ordinary. And when you have those movements, understand that, a training phase and a competition phase and any of that is more important than anything else. I mean, you want to make sure that you've got that time, and then the competition phase is when you start going heavy. Anyway, that's all I got for tonight. I mean, it wasn't going to be a long show. We've got some good things coming down the pipeline that we're going to announce this month. We have a couple rehabilitation programs for veterans that we're going to start, and obviously, we're launching the equine therapy this month. So we have a lot of good things coming down the pipeline. Thank you for listening to VRS, and we will catch you tomorrow night.